What is up, Dolph fans? I hope y'all can hear me. It's your boy Wade from What We Shula Do on the Miami Sports Music Podcast. Happy hangover from the Super Bowl. I don't know what you want to call it. That a horrible, pathetic excuse for a Super Bowl. Obviously, we're Dolphins fans, so there's a very specific reason we don't like it. For me, I was kind of upset that Tampa became the first team to win the Super Bowl in their home stadium because, you know, the Super Bowl plays in Miami a lot, so I was hoping we had a chance to get it, but just not a fan of the game. I mean, a ton of penalties that, if you're asking me, I think we're called very unequally, very unfairly, not enforced across the board. But the number one reason I don't like the Super Bowl is you see what happens with kind of these super teams now. You know, I was arguing with somebody not too long ago, specifically going over just the level of talent overall that went there. You know, when we look at guys like Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, who, by the way, look at who scored the touchdowns for the Bucs. Right, and I was here to all other non-factors. You know, Gronkowski didn't have a ton of catches during the year and all this other stuff. I mean, I think coming into the postseason, Antonio Brown had a touchdown in like 5 straight games. So I don't know how you could write off, I mean, one of the greatest receivers of at the least the last generation, who's never actually had bad play on the field. I mean, yes, there's some off-the-field stuff, and he missed a ton of time because of the suspensions and the cut and all that. But he's not one of these guys, like I always look back to Ray Rice. Like if you look at when Ray Rice had his little scandal, the reason he didn't get back in the NFL is because he was averaging 3.9 yards a carry by the time he went out, right? Antonio Brown was still, you know, a peak player and has proven he still could be. You know, Fournette was a top pick, you know, number 1 running back at LSU, number 1 pick. I think he went like 5 or something that year. I don't know, it was really high. Of course, Gronkowski, you know, one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Like, to say that team wasn't stacked, especially when you had an offense that went for 5,000 passing yards the year before, and then added, you know, in my opinion, maybe the best lineman in the draft. You know, added some defensive talent, Antoine Winfield Jr., you know, trying to live up to his dad's shoes. They were stacked, right? And I hate that super team mentality crap. I hated it in the NBA when they started doing it. Now it's kind of the norm. You know, and I don't like it happening to the NFL. So we'll see what happens, man. I mean, that Bucs team is strapped for cash. Strangely enough, all the guys I just mentioned, Brown, Fournette, Gronk, they may not be back next year. Shaq Barrett is most definitely gone, and he's been really good in pressures. The last 2 years, he was, I think, the top guy behind Aaron Donald, which is high praise. Chris Godwin, who may be a free agent target for the Finns. He'll be gone most likely. They're in a cap situation for sure, but I ain't here to talk about the Bucs. Let's talk about the real soft water team. By the way, shout out to Miami Sports Music. Get your DWA gear. I'm not wearing any of the What We Shula gear right now, but as always, we'll send you links for all that stuff. You can get all your Miami Sports Music DWA gear, msnclothing.com. There'll be a link at the bottom of this. So, what are we here to talk about? Well, as I promised you in a little teaser video we did, we're going to talk about a couple things that I don't like too much that are floating around the Dolphins fan base. And you guys probably already know what they are. So, first and foremost is going to be this nonsensical. I promised Stephen D I wouldn't curse, but I mean, this one really deserves it for you fans out there. But this trade scenario, we're going to call it. So we got a young stud quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, and yes, I said a young stud quarterback. All right, all you need to know is that this kid passed for 64.1 completion percentage his rookie season, which is pretty awesome as it is, to literal nobodies. I mean, he's throwing at the 5th and 6th string running backs, 4th, 5th, 6th string receivers, backup offensive linemen. When I say backups, the starters are rookies. So, I mean, what do you want from the kid? But of course, couldn't get any love because these Dolphins fans out here just don't have any respect. They can't see the foresight. You know, they want to talk about, oh, we should have got Herbert, or, you know, we should have done this, that, and third. Well, we didn't, right? This is where we're at now, and this is our boy. We're gonna ride with him because he's earned it. You know, and unlike another Dolphins quarterback who ran for his life his entire time he was on our team, we are not going to let that happen to our boy, right? And you saw that by literally every starter, with the exception of Jesse Davis at the beginning of the season, was new to the team. And you know, and when there were some injuries, the people that came on the field, namely Robert Hunt, was really our next guy up. You know, they all dealt. He was rookie too, right? So new to the team, 100%. And, you know, we love what Solomon Kinley did. We love what Austin Jackson did. Hunt played well when he came on. Eric Flowers was really good. You know, great signing. My one question is how are we going to address the center position? Not that Ted Karras played poorly, but we could definitely stand for some upgrading. And of course, we need some depth. We saw what happened with the injuries. But anyway, not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about this ridiculous trade scenario. So when this trade scenario first came up, the original word that got out was that the Texans, if Watson was going to go to Miami, which originally was supposed to be his preferred destination, wanted Tua, the number 3 overall pick, the number 18 overall pick, our second round pick. I'm not sure if it was ours that came from Houston or it was ours that we earned, and Xavier Howard. I got to beat myself out. Absolutely not. Ridiculous. I mean, Howard, PFF had him as a second-rated corner this year behind Jair Alexander. He was first-rated up until the last game. Led the league in interceptions again. Second time he's done that, by the way, for those of you that don't know. And I think he almost did it 3, but, next year he's going to do it 3 anyway, so what's it matter? But, Howard's our boy. Howard balled. Your boy Omar Kelly down there in South Florida was pushing those trade rumors for Howard all off season last year. Get it. If it didn't happen then, it ain't going to happen now, homie. Now, let's talk about, why this trade is such a stupid idea, right? Number one, the shelf life on a guy like Watson, who's already had a couple injuries, has already been really beat up, is extremely concerning. And I know you can say, oh, Tua had the injury in Alabama, a different thing, right? This kid has been beat up at the NFL level for a couple years, right? So not only is it a risk to kind of bring him on, but just let's look at the financial side for just a second here before we even get into the ammunition of the trade, right? So I have all the numbers right here. The Dolphins currently have just under $28 million in cap space. Now I know a number that's been floating around for whatever reason is 35. That 35 does not take into account Emmanuel Ogbah this year. I'm not sure. I think it's some kind of team option deal, whatever it is. Ogbah's on the hook for $7.5 million. So theoretically, we could cut him before June 1st, and we'd save every penny of that $7.5 million. But I have no idea why we would do that. Ogbah was one of the top DNs in pressures last year in the NFL. I think he gave us, I want to say 8 sacks. I should really have the numbers together. I apologize. But it's a bargain for him. Plus, I know my boy Solo D, Miami Sports Music, check him out, recently sold him a house in South Florida, so I don't think Ogbah wants to go anywhere. And if I'm Ogbah, why would you? We love him. The team did very well last year. We only got up to go. But anyway, so that puts Miami right back just under $28 million in cap space. Now, I will point out, just because I want to, that Kalen Ballage's dead money is $147,000, and I would gladly pay 8 times that to not have him on my team anymore. I know my boy TD, who also has a podcast on his network, me and went back and forth quite a few times in the offseason about Kalen Ballage, but you obviously see, we still need to fix the running game. That's a whole other issue. So now, when we get into Deshaun Watson, and this is the tricky part that I don't think a lot of people realize, yes, his actual guaranteed salary and cap number this year are not astronomical, right? Most of his money does not kick in until next year. However, the Houston Texans are currently almost $13.5 million over the salary cap currently. That's with no draft picks, with a bunch of crap on their team, no ammo. To move Deshaun Watson prior to June 1st, to trade him to any team, let alone the Miami Dolphins, they're going to take a $21.6 million cap hit, which means theoretically, under this new salary cap, they'd be almost $36 million under the cap. So before we even get into what it's going to cost and why it's a dumb idea to bring him on instead of Tua, the only way they're going to make that trade is if someone's willing to eat that cap number. And Miami just absolutely cannot do it. Before we even get into looking at the money we would free up if we include some of these players that they asked for, it just makes no sense. It's going to cut Miami down to $6 million, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's not how we built the team that won 10 games last year and could have won more. That's not how Flores and Greer want to do things, and it's just not how we're going to do things. It's absolutely asinine. I don't think that counts as a curse, so I'm going to save my dollar. So let's get into why it doesn't make sense to trade some of these players that we're talking about, because from my understanding now, the Texans have reworked kind of their theory, and they want 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 good starting defensive players. So from the Dolphins' perspective, we're not getting rid of Christian Wilkins. We're not getting rid of Raekwon Davis. And I just talked about Agba. So there's our line right there. You know, someone like Sealer, awesome, you know, coming in off the bench. I don't think the Texans are going to take something like that as a starting player, right? We're obviously not going to give up X. We're not going to give up Byron Jones. So who? I mean, Baker came on strong for us last year, and honestly, we need to fill a linebacker spot next to him. Vanoy, his cap numbers don't make sense. If anything, if we were going to do anything with Vanoy, we'd cut him. Because cutting Vanoy is going to save us over $9 million. And Vanoy played very well for us last year. Like, we're not going to cut him. It's just not going to happen. So, who? Needham's walking, right? Most likely, unless we re-sign him. Igbenogany will probably fill his spot. Bobby McCain's okay. I don't think he's the kind of guy they want to build their defense around. I have a lot of opinions about Eric Rowe. We'll talk about Eric Rowe a lot on here, but you know, hey, thank you for everything he's done, but I really think we need to upgrade that position. In fact, when we get into some free agent stuff we're going to talk about in the next coming weeks, my number one target this year as of right now is a strong safety that's going to replace Eric Rowe, hopefully. But, I mean, there's just not a lot of spots on the defense where I think we're going to give up a player that the Texans would want. Specifically, some of these young guys like, I mean, I just love him, my boy Christian Wilkins, right? I love the dude. Or Raekwon Davis, who's an absolute stud, right? So, you know, we switched to the offense. We're not really in a position to be giving away offensive pieces, you know, with the exception of maybe Gesicki. You know, we're not going to move one of our linemen. I think we're still going to do some work building the line, and I don't want to move Gesicki, right? So, to me, it just makes absolutely no sense. Like, unless the only way this works is if they were willing to take Tua, our first this year, and our seconds this year. Number one, I think that's way too much value, especially because I really like what I've seen from Tua. Number two, I already explained how financially it doesn't make sense. And number three, you know, Deshaun Watson's going to walk into a situation, if we do that and give up all those picks, just like Tua walked into. You know, the offensive line is better without the injuries, right? But there could still be injuries this year. We haven't made any moves yet to upgrade our weapons. And I'll talk about our weapons for just a second here. I'll hold it because it's going to get into the next thing. But especially if we give away both our first and both our seconds, the only option we have to upgrade our weapons is to bring in a big receiver in free agency. And based on what Watson's cap number would add and the way our cap's going to look over the next couple of years, it may not even be financially feasible to do that if we bring in Watson. So all around, besides not liking giving up Tua, not liking giving up X, and not liking giving up all this other stuff, it's just a move that doesn't make sense. Here's a little stat I'm going to give you guys, right? And it's a simple number, 12%. So 12% is the limit of your salary cap you want to ever give to a quarterback. And here's why. No team has ever won a Super Bowl, and I'll have to run this number for the Bucs because I'm not sure if this has just changed over the weekend, but no team has ever won a Super Bowl when their quarterback has accounted for 12% or more of their salary cap. By my check, the last team to even come close was Aaron Rodgers, was like 11.3 or something like that when the Packers won their last Super Bowl. But to put in perspective where Watson is next year, in 2022, as of right now, the estimated salary cap is going to be roughly $220 million. Now, it's obviously a big jump from this year. A lot of people are like, I don't get it. There's a reason for this, right? Like, a lot of revenue was lost this year with ticket sales, with merchandise, with a bunch of stuff because of COVID. So that particular band of revenue feeds a bunch into what the salary cap is. So for those who don't know, the salary cap is a percentage of all the revenue earned by the NFL in a given year. Right, so the NFL is a nonprofit organization. It's a coalition of 32 owners. Those owners split those profits equally. That total amount determines the salary cap, right? It's a direct percentage of that. So I'm looking here, overthecap.com. Great resource, by the way. If you guys ever want to check out salary cuts, that cap stuff, overthecap.com is just pretty freaking awesome. So again, next year, total salary cap is projected right around 228, 230 million-ish, right? It's currently Miami has 154 million in cap liabilities, which would mean we have about 73 million in cap space next year. Now, before you get excited, there's a couple key players that are going to have to get re-signed and things like that, right? Houston, on the other hand, and this is with Deshaun Watson on the books, has about $42 million. And when you ask, well, why? Deshaun Watson's cap number alone next year is $35 million. So adding Deshaun Watson next year would literally eat half of the cap we have. And yes, we would theoretically move Tua, who, by all current indications, the Texans actually don't want him as part of the deal. They probably want to get that third pick so they can build around a quarterback of their choosing. Personally, I'm 100% fine going with Tua, but cap number to trade Tua next year, roughly $18 million, right? So not only we lose $18 million in dead money there, right, but then we have a $35 million contract on the hook. Now, I'm not great at math, right, but $35 million out of 200 and roughly 30,000-ish, that's a pretty big chunk. That's a ton of money to pay any one player. And as hopefully everyone has seen during the Super Bowl this year, it's not just about individual players, right? It's a team effort. I mean, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, if you actually go through like PFF football ratings, PFF is Pro Football Focus, for those you don't know, amazing rating site. It is subscription-based, but it gives you everything you ever need to know about football. Those two players together are the highest graded wide receiver tight end combo in the history of the NFL. Now, obviously, PFF only goes back so far, right? There's a lot of things before film and all they can't necessarily rate, but I mean, that's an absolutely huge number, right? And for all the love everyone gives Mahomes, so I'm not knocking the guy, right? I'm not saying he's horrible or anything like that, but he has a lot of time in the pocket because he has really good offensive line who are all hurt for this team for the Super Bowl. He has really good players to catch the freaking ball, right? It's a team effort every time. Like Andy Reid took several teams to the Super Bowl. He took the Eagles, well, I shouldn't say took several teams to the Super Bowl. He took 2 teams to the Super Bowl, right? But even that Eagles team that he had, he took the NFC Championship 4 times. And yeah, I don't think McNabb was that great of a player, but all around, it's a team sport, right? So, all this being said, don't mortgage the house for an individual player. Now, if you look at the Stafford Jared Goff trade, which blew my mind as much as anybody else's, you'll see that the Rams' last first-round pick was like 2016, and they're not picking again for 2 more years after this year now. Right, and you see what happened to them. They're in cap hell, right? They paid Jared Goff, they paid Todd Gurley, they paid Robert Woods, they paid Cooper Kupp, they paid Jalen Ramsey, they paid Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald deserved it, right? But look what happened. They fell from glory pretty hard, pretty quickly. And they always had a strategy of trading off a first-round pick for an already established great player, which I am not against. What I am against is giving up an entire draft class for a player who's overpaid and is not going to solely push you guys to the Super Bowl. Like, if you look at our team last year, I know some fans believe this, wildly incorrectly, we were not a Super Bowl ready team. We played very well in some circumstances. We played very well in most aspects of the game, and I love the direction of the team. I love where it's going. But we could not run the ball for crap. We had a ton of injuries at the receiver core, in the running back core. I mean, we had injuries from week to week, kind of all over the place. I mean, Vinoy missed a bunch of games. Christian Wilkins missed some games. Byron Jones missed the first couple of games of the season. Our depth in a lot of these positions is not quite there yet. On the D-line, maybe, because I know I just said Christian Wilkins, right? But you saw what happened, for example, against the Bills in September, when Igbenogany, as a rookie, shadowed the league's leading receiver in Stephon Diggs and got absolutely embarrassed for it. You saw what happened in some of these games, like against Denver. We have injuries to the O-line, we have injuries to the receiving core. Tua was running for his life, which, fun fact, by the way, Mahomes ran over 500 yards before getting sacked or throwing the ball in that Super Bowl. I don't care if he can do it. I don't care if Watson can do it. I don't want my quarterback doing that. I don't care if Tua can do it. That's a horrible scenario. If you look at the games we lost, Tua got beat up. Happened against the Broncos. It happened against the Bills late. I mean, even the Raiders, I wouldn't say they beat us up, but they played very well, right? There's certain things that you can just tell are going to happen in Dolphins games with the current roster we have. Number 1, tight ends are going to eat us alive. Back to Eric Rowe. Number 2, when the O-line is healthy and stands up, We're not going to turn the ball over. We're going to move the ball efficiently. Not necessarily huge plays. We're going to move the ball efficiently, but we can't run it. So everything that we're doing right now needs to focus on fixing those three things, right? Being able to have big plays, because right now with injuries, especially to what we had to the receiving core, we did not have them last year. We need to run the ball, and we need to be able to stop tight ends. So that's my kind of Deshaun Watson rant, but it brings me to my next rant. The number 3 overall pick in the NFL draft. Now, I shared some information on the DWA Rocky Mountains page about this. But how can I say this nicely? Stop it! Under no circumstances should we be spending the number 3 overall pick on a receiver, let alone the kid Smith from Alabama. I'm trying not to say his whole name because I don't even want to bring attention to him. There's a number of reasons for this. Number 1, receivers are a dime a dozen in the NFL. I mean, you saw what happened last year in the draft. In the first round alone, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson. I'm probably missing some. Brandon Ayuk, last year, second round. KJ Hamler, Laviska Shenault, T. Higgins. I know I'm missing some more. Like, there was a bunch of really good receivers that came out last year. And hint, it happens every year. Go back a couple years ago. Terry McLaurin, who in my mind is the next great receiver in the NFL. A.J. Brown, late first round pick. DK Metcalf, second round pick. By the way, remember those 3 names. I'm going to touch on those again in a second. So, why am I so against this? Well, again, go back to the information I shared. If you guys haven't seen it, I'll break it down for you. I pulled the last decade of drafts in the NFL. And here's a hint. Do you know how many times a wide receiver went in the top 3 in the last decade? 0. Never happened. The highest a receiver was drafted in the last decade was number 4 overall. That receiver was Amari Cooper. Obviously, Amari Cooper didn't work out with the team that drafted him, right? And he's now in Dallas. Now, since he got to Dallas, he has played well. I'll give him that. In the last decade, those other receivers who played well, Mike Evans, who, if you guys haven't actually compiled the stats of Mike Evans yet, like, please do. Mike Evans has had 1,000 yards. I want to say it's 7 seasons in a row. It's like every season of his career. I mean, I absolutely love the dude. He's been a monster. The other one is Julio Jones. Now, if you don't remember, Julio Jones had a pretty damn good career, but he's been injured throughout it. You know, in the beginning, he was the number 2 guy, but the trade up to get Julio Jones was absolutely nuts. Like, the Falcons gave up, I want to say it was 2 first-round picks. They moved up to, like, number 8 overall. It was a sight to behold. And I'm sorry, I'm looking away here. I'm trying to find the data I compiled to give you guys about basically all the huge receivers that went. But long story short, none of them have been worth it. I mean, you got guys in the first round like Tavon Austin going. You got guys in the first round that just quite frankly have not earned, I mean, anywhere near what's a first-round pick. And more importantly, you have guys that have went much later who have been more valuable than some of these guys. And I know what you're going to say. Like, okay, that happens in every freaking position, right? That's true, but for whatever reason, it seems to happen way more often at the receiver position. Now, maybe that's just because, you know, receivers are a different breed and maybe they need to be in the right system, whatever it is. But I'll give you a quick statistical breakdown of what we came up with at receiver in terms of contributors. Malcolm Perry, Lynn Bowden. Now, Bowden, however you want to say it, was a 5th-round pick of the Raiders. We traded for him. Perry was, I believe, our 6th or 7th-round pick. Jakeem Grant was, I think, a 4th or 5th-round pick for us years ago. Alan Hearns, we signed as a free agent. We did it to Albert Wilson, but he'll be gone. You know, Parker has been the guy that we stepped up when we took in the first round. Now, like what he's done the last 2 years, right? Tied for the league leading contested catches this year, despite missing like 16 quarters of football. You know, last year he had the monsters campaign, but look how many years it took him to come along. Like, if we take into account Preston Williams as an undrafted free agent, some of these other guys, like, where you can find production is crazy. But here it is, guys, the complete list of receivers taken in the top 10 in the last decade. So 2020, none. 2019, none. 2018, number 5 overall, Corey Davis. Number 7 overall, Mike Williams. Number 9 overall, John Ross. 2018, thank you for proving my point. 2017, nothing. 2016, nothing. 2015, number 4, Amari Cooper, who we already talked about. Number 7, Kevin White. Once again, thank you for proving my point. 2014, number 4, Sammy Watkins. Number 7, Mike Evans. Mike Evans, we already talked about. Sammy Watkins, I think we can all agree, not worth where the Bills took him at. Keep in mind, the Bills took him. He's playing like 3rd string on the Chiefs right now. By the way, that was 2014. This wasn't 30 years ago. All right, this was recent. 2013, number 8, Tavon Austin. 2012, number 5, Justin Blackmon. Now, when you get to 2011, you do have A.J. Green and Julio Jones. Now, A.J. Green looked really good early on. The last 3 or 4 years, he's battled a ton of injuries. Now, I know he hasn't had much help out there, right? So I'm willing to put him in the group of wins. You know, A.J. was really good, you know, before he started getting hurt. But go back to 2010, none. So what's my point? My point is that the majority of receivers taken in the top 10 are not worth the picks. None of them are taken as high as 3, right? They're just not. There's a possible solution here. If you guys really want a receiver at number 3, think back to what the great Don Shula did when he first took over the Dolphins. He had the number 3 overall pick. And he sent it to Cleveland in exchange for a guy named Paul Warfield. Jesus, I'm all over the place. Paul Warfield. So we can all agree Paul Warfield was a Dolphins great. I want to say he caught 12 touchdowns that year, first year as a Dolphin. So the reason I said remember those 3 names earlier is because there's 3 names that I think are worth a trade if you're willing to spend a pick that high in receiver. Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, and DK Metcalf. McLaurin, in my mind, is a clear number 1. I'd probably go back and forth on A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. But here's the thing. I mean, these guys have 2 seasons under their belt. They're all 3, I should say, phenomenal players. All going to be true number 1s for the next decade. And here's the thing. Despite all that, if you called up the Seahawks, the Washington, I'm going to call them Redskins until they come up with a new name, or you called Tennessee, every single one of those players would be traded for the number 3 overall pick. And this is my point. The number 3 overall pick is not a pick you spend on receivers. It's a pick you spend on quarterbacks. It's a pick you spend on edge rushers. It's a pick you spend on corners. And it's a pick you spend on left tackles. It just is. It's what it's been. It's these guys are the hardest to come up with great players at their positions. And as you saw last year, we don't need great players to move the ball. Like, yes, it's great when Parker's on the field and Preston Williams is on the field and Gesicki's on the field, right? But some of these other guys played very well. And sure, they played well. They didn't play amazing. They didn't play perfect. They're not going to the Hall of Fame. I 100% agree. But adding Smith is not the answer. And I'll go as far as to tell you this. Smith shouldn't be the answer, period. Jamar Chase is the best receiver in this draft. Jalen Waddle can be had at probably 18. And in my opinion, he's just as good, if not better. He's sure faster. You know, what sets Smith apart at Alabama, you know, the term they use in college is Alabama open. I mean, the kid was wide open. And yes, he has great route running skills. I'm not taking that away from him. But I challenge all you guys to go back and watch some highlights. So I recently had a couple drinks, and I watched highlights of Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith. Devontae, however you want to say it. So for those not really super draft savvy, those are considered the 3 best receivers in this draft. And to me, it was very clear that Jamar Chase stood out as the best one. Jalen Waddle probably had the best highlights for sure. He had some great catches. The kid's got speed. The kid can put moves on people. If you go back and watch Smith's highlights, what you'll see is he's always just kind of catching balls wide open. It's not great catches. It's not great speed. It's not amazing hands. It's not the body control. It's just insane. So, I mean, you can chalk it up to what you want. You know, you can talk about Alabama's running game. You can talk about, you know, their accuracy of their quarterback. You can talk about the schemes, you know, the fact that no one really knew who he was coming into the season, so they targeted other players. But at the end of the day, like, the kid did get open. I can't take that away from him. But I just challenge all you fans that are super hype on this trade to go out there and just hop on a highlight reel. Please. I'm begging you. because I think that number one, Ja'Marr Chase is easily the best receiver in this draft. And I think that number two, if we are looking at a receiver, we need to trade back. Now, there's some free agent options out there. Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson. I'm really high on Allen Robinson, and we'll talk about that probably in the next video we do here. We're going to talk some free agency stuff as the time goes, give some profiles of some specific players. And then we're going to kind of do the exact same thing for the NFL draft coming up. So I just hit the half-hour mark. I don't want to try to run too far over the half hour because I know people are busy. But, if I can wrap this up, I'd be more than willing to look at a potential trade down if we want to grab a receiver, grab some extra picks, and hopefully still target a guy like Ja'Marr Chase. But to me right now, and this may change over time, the only option at number 3 is probably the best player in the draft, and that's Penei Sewell out of Oregon, left tackle. And I know we just got Austin Jackson, right? And Jesse Davis played okay on the right side, but our line still has holes. And, adding a generational talent like Sewell could really open us up to do some things. And, hey, Sewell's left-handed. We could maybe play him on the right side or kick Austin to the right side and plug him at left and then move Jesse Davis in the guard and maybe kick Kinley in. There's tons of options. You saw how much we changed the line schemes around when one person got hurt last year. We didn't just replace that person. We kicked Jesse Davis to one side and then kick Solomon out and then put in Hunt at guard and all these other things. So we got to fix the running game. We got to protect Tua. Our best option to do both of those things is Penei Sewell. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I really wanted to hammer hard on why it's not a smart move to take Deshaun Watson in a blockbuster trade, why it's not a smart move to throw our number 3 pick at a receiver, specifically the receiver a lot of people were talking about. I know we played with Tua before. I know the Heisman. I know the chant, blah, blah. I get it all. The last receiver to win a Heisman was Desmond Howard. How well did he do in the NFL? So just kick it around. Thanks for kicking it with me, guys. My one last request, I'm going to add potentially an additional link today for those of you to know Mark Angelo. Mark Angelo runs the Dolphin Club in Northern California. Awesome dude. He is currently doing some charity raffles to raise money for the Dolphins Cancer Challenge. So what he's doing essentially is he has a bunch of merchandise, some autographs, some rare, some donated by the Dolphins, all kinds of stuff. They're selling raffle tickets, $5 a head. So what you want to do is head over to his Facebook page, send him an email, send him a message, whatever it is. I'm going to have the link down here. You can buy raffle tickets for $5. All the profits go directly to the Dolphins Cancer Challenge, and you can probably win some cool stuff. So with that being said, guys, as always, go check out Miami Sports Music Clothing. Go check out What Would Shula Do Clothing. There's going to be a link down the bottom. Go check out some of the other awesome podcasts out here on the Miami Sports Music Podcast Network. Fins up. And let's look forward to free agency and the draft. League year starts soon.